The convoy was traveling along the nighttime highway when suddenly a large tree blocked their path. Maggie had a sinking feeling that something was amiss. There was no response on the walkie-talkies. They looked back and the car behind them was under control. Then, a car pulled up ahead of them. The door of the car opened, and the scene inside made Maggie's heart sink. To their shock, the saviors had escaped and captured Jerry. A bald man dragged Jerry out of the car, while two other men carried a coffin. Maggie sensed that their situation was dire. The two men placed the coffin onto their vehicle, and then a figure emerged from the car. It was Simon, one of Negan's most trusted lieutenants. Simon continued, "You're well aware of recent events and our rules. Now, I demand you surrender your weapons. If you don't comply, I won't hesitate to send this chubby fellow on a journey. And as for the rest of you, whoever moves, dies." Though reluctant, Maggie had no choice but to obey. The most important thing now was to survive. In a matter of minutes, each car's weapons were handed over. Maggie couldn't help but ask, "How did you escape?" Simon, with a smug grin, didn't directly answer the question. He threatened, revealing that the saviors were currently attacking the kingdom. Alexandria's safe zone, too, was likely to be annihilated after this night. As for you, the hilltop, it's full of peasants, so you're in luck. You're going to be our ration base. As long as you keep producing food, you'll live. Furthermore, Simon revealed that it was their old friend Eugene who had facilitated their escape. Eugene is a genius, so now you have two choices. 1. I kill the fat man on his knees, drag you out of the car and put you in this coffin, and then I kill you in front of everyone at the hilltop. Or the second option is to turn around and go home and grow your own food for the saviors. Of course, you know our rules. One of you must be killed, and then we'll be good friends. As soon as Simon finished speaking, the bald man was about to make his move.
Nah, Gary. I got this.
I just really needed you to know what I was talking about. I need you to smell it. Now tell me, I don't gotta kill this gent with the lustrous mane. Tell me I don't gotta go down the line. Tell me, Maggie! Gary! No!
You don't need to do any of it. I just want to ask you a favor.
What is that?
I'd like that box. Take Neil home to bury him in.
It was a request Simon would not refuse. Half an hour later, Maggie led the convoy back to the hilltop. On the way, Maggie's face was blue and her anger was pushed down. As the convoy halted, Maggie stormed out and made her way inside. The people left behind looked at her with confusion, not understanding what had transpired. Then Maggie came to the cell door. When Gregory saw Maggie returning, he immediately approached her and started babbling incessantly. However, Maggie was in no mood to listen to him. Jesus comes along too. He doesn't know what Maggie wants.
This one tried to kill you.
Kate wants to put on a show, let her put on a show.
You want to be next?
No, I don't.
Saviors killed one of our own tonight on the road. We aren't even, but that was a start.
Maggie.
Get more guards on duty. Start fortifying the walls and bury Neil. First light, everybody else starts tending crops.
I thought we don't give up.
No, we don't. Simon said the others are under attack, which means there's no more supplies going in, but there might be people. We have to be ready.
Maggie is unlikely to give up the resistance. She would rather die in a blaze of glory than live a life of servitude. In a secluded spot, tears welled up in Maggie's eyes. In a place where nobody was around, tears welled up in Maggie's eyes as she experienced, for the first time, the emotions Rick must have felt. Watching trusted companions perish, she felt the helplessness of a leader who couldn't do anything. Making decisions was truly difficult. A single mistake could lead to the death of everyone. After a while, Maggie adjusted her emotions. She asked her men to put the man into a coffin. Then she wrote a line on it. "We have 38 hostages. Don't do anything rash. At the kingdom, its residents were gathered together as the saviors had also arrived. Gavin stood on a car and addressed them, expressing his reluctance for things to escalate. He reminded them that they could have led peaceful lives, but now their future looked bleak. From now on, all inhabitants of the kingdom belong to Negan, and everything produced belongs to the saviors. Additionally, able-bodied men and women would be sent to Salvation Hall to repair the buildings damaged by them. Gavin had his men search the area, but they couldn't find Ezekiel, the man Negan had named for execution. Gavin wants someone to come forward and tell him where Ezekiel is, or he's going to play by the savior's rules. Gavin is also very angry when he sees no reaction from the crowd, and he's very reluctant to take things that far. Unbeknownst to them, Ezekiel was watching from a corner. He couldn't stand idly by for the sake of his people. Pouring gasoline on the ground, he ignited an explosion that drew everyone's attention. Gavin quickly dispatched a few men to check it out. Just then a bus pulls up and it's Ezekiel. He's coming to save his people. The bus cuts off the saviors and the residents run for cover. The people are running so fast they've already left the gates of the kingdom. Carol, who had come here to report the news, saw the scene, but she didn't see Ezekiel. Carol had to stop the last woman, who told Carol that the king was inside and hadn't come out yet. Carol didn't press the issue any further, but simply told the woman she could take the residents to the cottage where she had stayed before. Ezekiel eventually made his way to the gate. He had no intention of escaping. Death might be the best fate now. Gavin arrives with his man. His face hardened. The workforce has been let go by this guy. Gavin punched Ezekiel directly in the face and then said to him. He acknowledged that their previous cooperation had been pleasant and expressed regret over what happened to the child. He conveyed that he didn't desire such outcomes. Gavin warned Ezekiel that his current actions would lead to the deaths of many people. He told Ezekiel that sometimes one must learn to swallow their pride and comply to survive. Gavin wasn't a bad guy, but he had to play by the savior's rules to survive. Then Gavin had his men load up and head back to Salvation Hall. Meanwhile, outside the walls, Morgan finally arrived at the location and overheard the conversation inside. Once the people inside moved away, Morgan quietly scaled the wall and entered. To his surprise, Morgan caught sight of a small figure darting through the shadows. Morgan was in a hurry. It was Benjamin's brother Henry. Morgan tried to follow him, but in a flash, the boy was gone. Suddenly, he heard a noise behind him. It was Carol. She had also come to rescue Ezekiel. They quickly exchanged information with each other. Morgan informed Carol about what he had seen with Henry, and she was shocked and deeply concerned. They had to act swiftly. If they couldn't avoid killing, their only option was to eliminate all the saviors. Quietly advancing, they reached the site of the explosion. 2 saviors were trying to put out the fire while another 2 were searching the building for fire extinguishers. Now this road is the way to go. They can only find a way to kill these people, taking advantage of the other 2 returning to the building. Along with the sound of fire, Morgan approached the man silently. Both men were taken out before they could even scream. Morgan's character had indeed undergone a significant transformation compared to before. Carol gave Morgan a deep look and moved on. Carol and Morgan hid on either side of the stairs, as there were 2 other people looking for the fire extinguisher. Soon, footsteps could be heard approaching. Morgan was really excited by the previous incident. He would not show any mercy to the saviors. He and Carol proceeded towards the courtyard. As they reached the corner, they intended to enter through a doorway. However, they overheard voices inside. Curious, Morgan discreetly peeked and saw 3 people scavenging for supplies. Despite Carol's advice to ignore them, Morgan couldn't resist. He's going to kill these bastards. Meanwhile, Gavin had finished gathering items and was preparing to leave. However, some of his subordinates had yet to return. Gavin tried using the radio to contact them, but received no response. Gavin had a vague feeling that something was going on. Immediately after, Gavin called out to several of his other subordinates, but received no response. He realized that something had definitely gone wrong. Suddenly, gunfire erupted from a nearby house. Gavin cursed. He told his men to take Ezekiel and retreat to the house. Outside will only be broken by each one of them. Once inside, Gavin commanded his subordinates to block all exits. He believed that the attackers wouldn't be numerous. Just then there's a huge explosion at the door. Everyone panicked. They didn't see anyone, but they shot at the door. After 2 minutes, Gavin signaled them to cease fire. Not wanting to waste ammunition, everyone was still staring nervously at the door, but they didn't realize that 2 figures appeared behind them. Ezekiel quickly dropped to the ground as well. Taking advantage of the chaos, Carol and Morgan launched a surprise attack. swiftly eliminating several of the saviors. Gavin was also shot, and his pistol fell under the table. The men pin Morgan to the ground and punch him hard. Morgan can't do anything but hold the man's neck. Morgan noticed the man's wound, and reached in and yanked out the man's internal organs. The scene was extremely bloody. Gavin looked at the scene, directly sucked in a breath of cold air. What is this monster? Covered in blood. Morgan stood up nonchalantly, as if the violent act had been insignificant. Gavin ran towards the outside in fear. Morgan's figure was like a villain that cast a horrible shadow in Gavin's mind. At the moment, Gavin was sitting behind the container, trembling, not daring to make a sound. As Morgan approached, the sound of his staff scraping the ground created an eerie tune. Gavin saw the dark shadows approaching as if he were the weak one, and he could only pray that he wouldn't be discovered. However, immediately after, Morgan simply stared at Gavin with cold indifference in his eyes. Just as Morgan is about to make a move, Ezekiel stops him. Ezekiel didn't want Morgan to continue killing. Ending Gavin's life wouldn't solve anything. Ezekiel knew what Morgan was like when he first came to the kingdom, the man who talked about peace every day. Morgan was in a very bad state, and Carol was advising him at this point. Morgan's heart is actually very torn. The end of the world has driven him crazy, insisting on the way of peace. He did not see the world peace and beauty, but the people around him died one by one, so Morgan still wants to do it. But before Morgan can do it, Gavin is stabbed through the throat by a stick behind him. This person is Henry, who just ran in. Ezekiel was in disbelief. Carol also didn't want to see children going through such experiences. Morgan also wonders internally if he was right or wrong to go on a massacre spree of the saviors, which in the eyes of a child is the way to resolve hatred. Ezekiel doesn't blame the kid, because he knows that Henry knows that his brother died at the hands of the saviors, so he's lurking around to get revenge. In the Alexandria safe zone sewer, Carl was nearing his final moments.